Welcome everyone to Warrant and Finance Committee meeting on Monday, October 20th, 2015. 19th? Oh man, 19th. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Don't do that. Okay, Monday, October 19th, 2015. We are here tonight to discuss both the proposed fire and rescue ordinance and the proposed historical structure ordinance, also known as the Little Red Schoolhouse ordinance in the vernacular. So, what is your pleasure? Should we start with first? Should we go ahead? Who do we love more tonight? Little Red Schoolhouse lady who's here to listen, or fire and rescue lady who's here to listen?
I would suggest, I don't know, but I don't think there's much controversy with respect to the Little Red Schoolhouse.
Then let's do it up first. Here we go. Little Red Schoolhouse, you're up.
I will refrain from making the motion to move this forward because of my involvement in other.
Okay, but you are not going to recuse yourself, right?
I'm not going to recuse myself at all, absolutely not.
Okay, good.
No, absolutely
especially when there's only 4 of us. So tonight, we are down 2 members. Both had family commitments that they were unable to join us with, and Mr. Bisson has respectfully submitted his resignation due to work and school conflicts. Evening meetings are no longer working for him. But that still leaves us with a 6-member full board, providing no one else.
And replacement, how's that going to happen?
It is not going to happen. The ordinance is set up so that as long as we are a full board, which we are still, we are all set. Okay. So as long as nobody else leaves us officially, then we should be able to make it through June. We just got to hop along together, guys. Hop along together through June. So, all right. Do we wish to discuss anything about this ordinance? Is everyone familiar with the ordinance? Everyone feels good about it? Any concerns?
I would like to ask those who are here in the audience if they have any feelings about this in its present form. Is that appropriate, Madam Chair?
I think that is. Oh, it is. I think that where the select board has made clear that there will not be any alterations from what is in front of us, I think the time for a public hearing was the place for the public to suggest alterations, and I think our job tonight is simply to say, what are we going to recommend to the town meeting on the floor?
Larissa wants to go home tonight.
No, I don't think it's our job.
No,
I just don't think it's our job.
If they took the trouble to come to this, I was just hoping to be able to give them a chance to
well,
say
that's
something.
respectful. Did you wish to say something, or do you wish to just listen to see what we were going to do?
Well, I've never been to a Warrant and Finance meeting before, so...
We're really nice people.
Yeah, you seem very nice.
So my concern was not that you should not be welcome to speak. My thought was that because the select board has held a public hearing to give people the opportunity to voice concerns regarding the ordinance, our committee has been passed the ordinance in the final version that will go to the town meeting.
Great.
And so our job is simply to say to the town meeting, we think this should pass, or we don't think this should pass, or we think this should be tabled. But my sense is that the group, I'll straw poll us, are we all going to say ought to pass?
Madam Chair, could I recommend that we put a motion on the floor first and then have a second, and then we can move forward?
You wanted to do an act? Well, I thought if we were straw poll, then maybe that would not be concerned about whether or not we needed to let the audience speak. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Positive.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
I have been abstaining from this vote because of an initial contact that I had with Dale pertaining to physically doing the project.
Oh. Or is that not an option any longer, though, because of current circumstances?
I guess so.
I think it's unlikely that you would be doing that project. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
So I think that where you no longer have
You need full.
I do, and where you no longer have a financial interest.
I'm with you.
Okay. All right. So I will entertain a motion, please.
I make a motion that we submit to the
Recommend the amendment as drafted.
that we recommend it as written and as passed by the...
Okay. So a motion on the floor that, as I understand it, is to recommend ought to pass as written.
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Fabulous. 4-0. Motion carries. Okay, great. Ought to pass, going to the meeting. Okay? That was
Smile, Dale.
I can't believe it.
That was the easiest motion to do. So you might want to take this opportunity to run. This next one is not going to be quite so easy.
Thank you very, very much.
Look forward to our meeting.
Thank you very, very much.
All right, so now we are on to the potentially not quite as simple
Yes.
fire. And Tom Gore, could you hit us with what happened tonight?
Okay, well, I assume leading up to this that everybody has seen the correspondence that I sent, the email that I spent on 10/19 and on 10/17. concerning this.
Prolifically, yes.
Prolifically.
Yes.
Tom?
Probably.
Well, let me read it then, just so the people who are seeing this, on 10/17, in response to an email from a combined, actually it wasn't, it was two separate emails, one from our selectman, excuse me.
Can I start from the beginning?
And one from Dick Neal. Let me read. Folks,
From who to who?
I will attempt from me to Ed Walsh, the selectman to who I was referring a minute ago, and I couldn't remember his name, excuse me. Thanks, Ed, but I can't see it from here. Okay, this was actually to members of the committee that have been working on drafting the ordinance, and also to Warrant and Finance and Jen Rue, etc. Folks, I will attempt to explain my concerns with the revisions suggested by the Moran letter. The Moran letter being the response that the selectmen got when they sent the draft off to the attorney for comment. And that's in parentheses. I believe and have believed that the ordinance as drafted is fundamentally flawed because it does not distinguish between our volunteers and emergency responders that the town may choose to hire as employees to serve shifts providing coverage. When I joined the ordinance writing group at the request of Warrant and Finance, it was thought too late to do a major redraft of the ordinance to address the issues that commonly arise in departments where hired professionals serve alongside volunteers. I did content myself with the notion that if the department was given the authority to manage personnel affairs, that the issue could be adequately addressed in personnel policies, those being personnel policies developed by the fire department. In reading the Town of Acton personnel policy, a reading of the Town of Acton personnel policy does not appear to provide an employment category for volunteers, see Article 4, unless the document anticipates classification of temporary employees, see Article 4, paragraph D. If this is the case, then in accordance with the policy, and I quote here, the policy says, this being the Town of Acton employee personnel policy, the employee may be terminated for any reason at any time by the Board of Selectmen, unquote. That started as a quote. Article 16 of the policy speaks to all employees and volunteers. At least this particular article does consider volunteers, does not consider volunteers employees. Okay. The 1014-2015 draft of the proposed ordinance adds Article 6.4, recommended in the Moran letter. Provision stipulates that, and I'm quoting here, 6.4, town personnel policy, the town personnel policy shall supersede the fire rescue personnel policy in the event of any conflicts. Okay? At best, this is very sloppy wording. At worst, it grants the Board of Selectmen the authority to terminate any volunteer at will and for no cause. In addition, this provision appears to supersede the provisions of Article 6 of the proposed ordinance when applied to volunteers. The combination of provisions provide volunteers less protection than the hired employees. If through some clarification the policy is determined to apply to volunteers, the policy contain other provisions which are not compatible with the voluntary status. I do not have disagreement with the application of the policy, that being the personnel policy, to per diem employees. I have an objection to the application of the policy to our volunteers. As we all know, when departments merge professional hired responders with volunteers, problems arise which usually result in loss of volunteers and diminution of the volunteer effort. We need to be very careful, and this could get very expensive for the town. Okay, then I had a communication from Dick in which he suggested, well, the problem is with the personnel policies, and that's what needs to be straightened out. And so I wrote back to Dick and sent it to everybody else. Dick, your suggestion is an avenue to pursue. However, at the present time, the way the personnel policy was constructed and implemented, there is no path to assure that the job will get done, nor is there a path to ensure that volunteers will be heard in the process. As things currently stand, the personnel policy can be amended by 2 selectmen with no input from anyone else. I do not believe I can recommend the ordinance draft to the Warrant and Finance as either the 10.7 or the 10.14 draft exist. To move this forward, I think we will have to exempt volunteers from the Town of Acton personnel policy until the issue can be corrected. So,
Did you discuss this tonight?
we discussed this tonight, and we do not have a resolution. Members of the committee, some members of the committee feel that the selectmen can adequately address this issue in the personnel policies before we meet next week. I suggested an avenue to move forward was simply to amend the draft ordinance by exempting those that we consider volunteers right now, get this done, and then go back at some point in the future and deal with the personnel policies or this as need be. But right now, as things stand, if we implement the documents as they exist, it clearly gives the selectmen the authority to terminate anybody at will at any point in time without any input from anybody else, any of our volunteers, okay? That's as it's written, and that's what my objection is. And I think others understand the objection and recognize the problem. I don't know that we have a solution.
Is there a status or a category of temporary workers?
Yes.
And tell me about that.
Okay. I will read you.
Would volunteers be automatically declared as temporary workers each time?
And that's where the problem specifically arises. I
Okay.
will read to you from the personnel policy.
Please, I'd appreciate
Okay.
that.
Okay. Let me find it here. Nope. I have a lot of papers in front of me. Okay, coming back to the personnel policy. Okay, we have an article in the personnel policies as adopted by the selectmen employee categories. There are 4 or 5. There are 5 categories outlined. Okay, and these are the only categories of employees that exist as defined by the selectmen. We have full-time salary. That's pretty clear what they are. We have full-time hourly employees. We have probationary employees, and if you have questions with respect to any of these, I will be glad to read you the specifics of this. Then we have temporary employees, and this is the one that clearly, or I think clearly applies to the people who have been our volunteers, because they do get paid a stipend. And I'm going to read what this paragraph says, and this is where the problem arises. This is in Article 4, Paragraph D of the Town of Acton personnel policies as created and implemented by the selectmen. Temporary employees work on a non-permanent basis, usually within a limited time frame. They are not entitled to benefits, and then the employees may be terminated for any reason and at any time by the Board of Selectmen. That's it. Okay? And that obviously is a red flag. It's a red flag to me. I think everybody understands what the problem is. The issue now is to find a remedy.
So everyone can understand what the problem is, but I guess what I would like to hear is, does everyone see it as a problem? Or do they see it as something that, okay, we acknowledge that that could become a problem, but for right now, if I had gone to the other meeting, would I have left with a clear understanding that the majority of the group over there wanted the ordinance that we have in front of us to move forward?
I'm not sure. I think
Mr. Catanzi.
As a majority, we said that we would trust the selectmen. The problem is with the town policy. We would all work with the selectmen and, if necessary, badger them to death to get that policy straight, rather than rewrite ours with temporary wordage and then have to go back at a town meeting to change the wordage. There are apparently 2 people on the committee that wrote that ordinance that are gone, moved away. Possibly we could get a fire personnel or a rescue personnel on the committee to help rewrite that ordinance.
On the personnel committee?
Correct.
The policy committee?
The policy committee, because, you know, it can obviously be changed by a stroke of the pen from the selectmen. And we feel that we do have buy-in and we do help control them, because basically we're the folks that vote for the selectmen. So there is control in this. And I think most of us were pretty happy to go along with that.
Okay.
And,
So-
you know,
So the ordinance the draft that we received for the fire rescue ordinance, the last copy that we received, anyone have a date on that?
You have a date. I assume that the last one you have is a 10/14/15
Hold on,
draft.
I can tell you.
Revised 10/14/15.
The last one that I have is the one that is attached to the warrant that Jennifer sent as a,
the latest revision that we have is 10/14/15.
all right, I think we are working off the same one. So, so that has been kind of my stance all along, has been that if the fire and rescue departments say to me, individual me, we like this ordinance, we feel supported by this ordinance, we want this ordinance to go forward, especially where they have addressed my biggest concerns regarding,
Most of those have been addressed.
yeah, regarding the select board's control over the department. I do tend to agree that the problem is with the personnel policy, and I hear what you're saying. I hear that the personnel policy is subject to whim, okay? We know that. All of the policies at the select board, and I think that the fire department should be very well aware of that. On the other hand, I don't think that I have yet encountered a select board that is willing to risk the wrath of the fire department. Okay? So there's,
Point taken.
if it were many other departments in town, I'd be like, look guys, you better really think about this, but it's the fire department. Pretty much, given the size of our town meeting, all the fire department has to do is get every single one of them to go and vote, spouses and partners included, and the select board is screwed, right? Like, there's no possible political incentive to try to disengage the fire department in any way, or to do anything that the fire department's not going to like. And I suspect strongly that on Thursday night, our personnel policy may well be amended, or by the time that we get to town meeting on the floor.
That could well be.
Because if it's not, I suspect that the fire department will be there in force, and they will show up with some of them in their very snazzy uniforms, and they will remind the townspeople that they should not vote for what the select board has put forward because they don't like it anymore. And that then we don't have a problem.
No problem.
So-
I agree 100%.
So I guess that if what I'm hearing is that across the street tonight, the people that the ordinance is affecting are saying, we would like the ordinance to stand as it is, and we would like to be given the opportunity to push the select board to change their personnel policy so that our volunteers are protected from, what's the word I'm looking for? Capricious.
Arbitrary
Thank you.
and capricious.
Capricious, yes.
You remember, we're not talking about people here, but we're talking about selectmen in the future and fire chiefs in the future.
I hear that, but let us also remember that everything is temporary. Not to be like too philosophical, but it doesn't, you know, there is no ordinance that we can put in that is then set in stone.
Not as a state of mind.
So, Ms. Sayer.
I would like to speak on behalf of the rescue chief, that we are okay with the ordinance as written, as long as that personnel policy does get changed, and I will be a thorn in the side until it does get changed.
Great. And Mr. Kaczynski.
I have the same promise from the fire chief, who is currently doing his work, so he couldn't be right here.
Okay. So I'm hearing that. I understand why you would have reservations. I do, and I respect them.
I'm bringing my reservations to you.
Okay.
I'm bringing them to the board for the board's consideration. That's why I've done what I've done.
Okay, so I have expressed my comfort with the ordinance, understanding that I have no doubt about the political pressure that our fire and rescue can put on our select board, and that I have no doubt that we have some select board members that would not wish to disenfranchise the fire department. Okay, so I will be quiet now. Gentlemen, do you have anything to say?
I have three things I want to ask about.
Sure.
First is on page 2. I'm sorry, page 3.
Can you give us an article,
7.1, the initial, and then 7.3. They prepare a fire rescue commission consisting of the following people. And then 7.3, they will maintain a nominating committee and prepare a list of qualified candidates for consideration of the committee described in 7.1. It should be the commission also.
Yep.
Good point.
Absolutely.
Good point.
Okay, thank you. Nice
Got
job.
that, Bill?
Nice catch.
I have,
Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing I wanted to ask about is, has it been worked out to everyone's satisfaction as far as deputy fire and deputy rescue?
That issue was
I think
tonight.
if you have
it
anybody
is
who has
two deputy chiefs,
two deputy chiefs.
and I will have this amended by tomorrow, and I will see that it gets to Tom.
The only problem I have with that is the statement that says that the fire chief shall determine who has the higher rank between officers with the same rank.
Right, in other words, there's probably a more senior deputy, has held the job longer, has more experience
But if you have
than the two deputies.
if you have a deputy that's only going to deal with rescue,
There's
primarily.
two deputy chiefs, no title other than two deputy chiefs in this new ordinance.
But I would assume because the rescue is just being added to the organization, that the deputy fire chief will be over the deputy rescue chief, is that correct?
No.
They are even positions on the command tree.
Okay.
Fire chief, two deputies, and then captains and lieutenants below.
All right, fine. My third question is, I don't see it in here as far as one of the responsibilities of the fire chief, and that was he will or she will maintain a quality assurance program for those employees and volunteers who clinically treat sick and injured people.
Okay.
That has to be done in today's world in terms of making sure that those who are handling medical situations are analyzed after the events.
Okay, let us entertain that right now.
I thought that we asked this question last time and that Jenny had answered it to your
She
satisfaction.
has, and she can answer it again.
And I'll answer it again the same way.
Oh, okay.
Please do.
So what was the response? Because I remember you
All
being
right,
satisfied.
QA/QI is governed by Maine EMS. If you look at, I believe it's 8.2.12.
8.2.12?
Yep,
8.2.12, yes.
8.2.12, the fire chief shall exercise any other powers and duties described in this ordinance and powers of fire chief officers and fire wardens as described in Maine State, Maine EMS, and/or federal laws and regulations. What that means is they have to abide by all the rules and regulations of Maine EMS, including QA/QI, to meet or exceed.
I understand that, but it doesn't say anything about it's his or her responsibility to maintain it.
Right.
Saying we're gonna have a QA program.
Maine EMS requires that we have a QA/QI program and that we maintain it. They have specific rules and regulations we have to follow.
And
And that includes QAQI.
don't they also say you need to name that person,
Absolutely.
which you have already in that paperwork?
And sending it to the state.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right, all right. Then I have no further objections.
Okay.
Just so everybody's aware, three things we did change tonight during the course of the meeting. In 7.1, in Article 7.1, we scratched the following, starting in the first line of 7.1, Deputy Fire Chief, 1 year, Deputy Rescue Chief, 1 year, and inserted 2 deputy chiefs for 1 year each. And that got around that discussion that we were having difficulty with. Also, on line 2 of 7.1, oh, this may be inserted already in yours, to the selectmen, it says?
Yes,
Is that inserted in your?
it's already inserted.
Okay, all right, fine, all right. That was,
But we did change that again, Tom, remember
To what?
to recommended
right,
to the selectmen for appointment.
That's
Just a
right.
grammatical correction.
right.
Instead of recommended for appointment to the selectmen,
Yep.
just change the words to make it a little more clear.
Right.
And then your nominating committee will in fact, this on the second line of 7.3, change committee to commission.
Correct.
Okay.
Also, on 7.1.6, the word appointed was deleted and the term selected was inserted.
7.1.6?
Yeah.
And what was the change there?
We deleted the term appointed and inserted the word selected.
By whom?
By the other members of the committee, as I recall, other members of the commission.
Right.
Members of the Fire
Yes,
Rescue Commission shall be,
Selected upon adoption of this ordinance.
no, I'm
And
Tom, it was-
sorry,
new commission.
I'm reading the wrong line.
Yeah, there's a line above, Tom.
Yeah, okay, excuse me, my
So
eyes
which
are
one?
watering like crazy.
7.1.5?
That makes a better
Yes.
place to have the word
Yes,
selection.
yes, that makes it
Okay.
better.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
No
Okay.
problem. There's a lot of words and a lot of numbers.
Yes.
Select, right. Thank you.
Okay. Tom, Cashin, did you have any questions? Okay, so I would suggest that we are clearly not going to be voting tonight because we don't have a finished ordinance upon which to vote. But we are slowly clicking away at these. 3 down, 1 to go. We are, just as a reminder, Mr. Walsh, our committee has agreed to meet next Monday. I think it would behoove everyone involved if the select board could deal with the personnel policy issue on Thursday, so that when we meet on Monday, that is no longer an issue. That would be great. And that the ordinance be finalized, I'm hoping, at your meeting on Thursday, because if I remember our calendar counting properly, if we do not have a finished final ordinance to us next Monday, there is not time to have this on the town meeting for November 10th. Not that you are set in stone with November 10th, it can be of course changed, it's not a big deal, but if they wish to stay with November 10th, we will need to have that finalized ordinance in front of us on Monday night of next week.
There are 2 ways this can move forward. Either the selectmen can do the amendments that you're suggesting, and that's fine, but they have to be created. And not a lot of thought has been given to this, and there has to be buy-in by the volunteers in order to make this effective. That's one issue. The other issue, the other possibility to move this forward, which I did select or suggest that the group consider tonight, was the proposition that we simply insert in this ordinance as drafted that volunteers are exempt, our so-called volunteers are exempt from the application of the Town of Acton personnel policy. So there's 2 ways that this can move forward on the town meeting.
The way that the latter way that you suggested, my understanding from Mr. Catanzi was that that didn't have a lot of traction.
Well, that may be, and
Okay.
that's fine. This committee is going to vote as a committee. I'm not the committee.
I hear you.
I'm bringing issues to you for
So tell
consideration.
us who have not been to those meetings what this group has decided they want to present to the selectmen as a retort to the volunteers being able to.
It hasn't been formulated yet, and that's what I'm saying, but this can be a time-consuming process.
So there's all sorts of options, having two types of volunteers, volunteers for rescue and fire and other volunteers. You could add on things to the policy, or as you said, you could put it in here that they are volunteers but are not subject to the dismissal
Right, by the selectmen.
by the city.
I mean, the selectmen could simply choose to delete that line that says these people may be hired and fired at will.
But again, for volunteers, the selectmen may want to have that available for volunteers in other departments.
Well, there should be because there are a lot of volunteers that do a lot of work for the town. There should be a portion of the policy devoted to volunteers, but frankly, between now and November 10th, there's probably not enough time to do an adequate job of that. So
the selectmen have two options. One is to address the town policy and make some modifications, or maybe some addendum for exceptions in this new policy for fire and rescue.
there are a number of options.
We had talked that all over tonight. The fire chief brought up that if we put that in our ordinance, it takes away power from him to go beyond his level. Sometimes he has disciplinary problems that he doesn't feel safe in executing, and he brings that to the selectmen for recommendation, and that policy would eliminate it. So he was against it. As a group, we decided not to put it in there and to go after the personnel policy, which is actually what's in error.
So I think that is, and Tom, I agree, it's possible that we don't want to rush through a personnel policy. I hear what you're saying. Mr. Walsh?
Yes, as Mr. Tansy said, that's exactly how we discussed it tonight. In the morning, I'll be calling Jen Rue at the town hall and getting the personnel committee reenacted. Policy committee reenacted, and getting this moving forward post haste.
Was the policy committee disbanded?
Not disbanded, but they're not together on a regular basis.
Okay.
So we're just gonna tell them, give them something to do now. There are, I believe, 2 members that have moved to Florida.
The cases?
Yes, so this is gonna be so sorely missed. Because they also were part of the fire rescue. So, but, I don't have an issue if the other 2 members go along, putting a member or 2 from fire rescue on that committee to work on this. But I don't know whether this can get done before the 10th, but it will definitely be in the works. And I want to make darn sure it gets continued and gets done. Because I agree with this whole thing. We do have a flaw in the personnel policy. And, I'm the one who asked the chief, if we change this around to the way that Mr. Gore suggested, the chief did have an issue with trying to bring it forward to the selectmen. And if he does run into an impasse over there, he wants to have that option to bring it forward to us, for a final decision or at least a vacuum. The way it would be written under Mr. Gore's, which is fine. I appreciate him putting it together, but all we can do is say, yeah, chief, we agree with you, but there's no teeth behind us. You need to have that whole group, to be able to take care of a problem. And there was a problem, I can't go into the details, within the past 3 months that he did bring a personnel issue to us. And it was taken care of. And it was a sticky one. And, it needed that extra level to be able to take care of it.
Just to expand a little bit on what Ed says, and I agree entirely with what he said, but what I presented was something to move it forward without going through the process. It wasn't intended to be a conclusion, it was just in order to keep this moving. There are a number of other options to do that. So I don't agree with what I proposed as the ultimate solution. It was a temporary scenario to allow us to move forward with this.
So the other option for moving forward is trust, which is not always the best way to govern, but it also, government usually is a little easier if we can grease the wheels with some trust. So where there, as I mentioned earlier, zero incentive for any select board to tick off the fire department. If for anything else, your house might catch fire. There's a good reason to, or they might have a heart attack given,
I think it's also unique in this department because volunteers are so important.
Vital, and if we don't,
For the function of the department.
right, exactly.
The other issue I saw with this is to write it into the ordinance is gonna take another town meeting to change something in the ordinance. And which, could be, I don't think we wanna have another special town meeting between now and June. We will if we have to, but, we do what we need to do. But it's expensive, it's time consuming and whatnot. To be able to write it into the personnel policy can be done, as Tom said, with a stroke of a pen, or Bill actually said that. It can be done quicker, easier, and just move forward with it.
And I feel good if the policy committee is kind of brought back together and is part of that. I'm hoping that Virginia and Elaine would still be willing to serve in that capacity. And
Certainly hope so, they do a fantastic job.
yeah, and, especially if they can, if one, rescue and fire are able to put forward a couple of people to replace the Caseys, that seems like a really good solution to the problem. Nothing, Mr. Cashin? No. Okay. So, given that we cannot vote, or that because we don't have an ordinance to vote on, we will respectfully ask, as soon as the ordinance is ready, which I'm assuming would be Thursday evening,
Should be ready by
Okay.
tomorrow.
so that gets to us, so that members of the committee can read it and be ready to vote next Monday. Because in theory, next Monday's meeting could be efficient. Not that democracy is efficient, we don't want to trade that off, but it could be fairly straightforward.
Yes, and that would be wonderful. Because
Really
I'm tired of
would be.
this.
Because we
As
haven't even
everybody
started
else.
budget season yet, people, we haven't even started budgeting. So, okay, if no one else has any questions, then I would be delighted by a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Excellent,
Second.
wonderful, all in favor? Let's go home.